Toho Studios is one of the major production facilities, and we started the picture there. It's on the outskirts of Tokyo. I was appalled when I first arrived. Dirt floors on the stages, very primitive conditions. Their concept of soundproofing was not what we're used to in the United States. Very primitive conditions.
Toho Studios in Tokyo was one of the big studios there, and they can accommodate big productions. They had a tank where we put the mock-up of the Erasmus and built some of the major sets. The other thing is there's no air conditioning, there's no heat. So we started in the heat of the summer, and with all the lights in there, we were hot. Makeup was melting, we had a lot of patting down to do. And then in November, we were freezing because it gets real cold in Japan, and it was cold as hell.
Their film equipment wasn't up to our standards. I think at that point in the Japanese industry, they did a lot of 16mm work, and they had fabulous 16mm equipment. They did a lot of video. Their video stages were phenomenal, state-of-the-art stages, probably better than we had in the States. But their film was a dying industry there, so the conditions there were less than ideal.
It wasn't a little bit of a culture shock. It was a huge culture shock. First of all, here I was in the midst of perhaps the #1 leader in technology at the time in the world. And I found that the equipment, the lights, tripods, just about any motion picture making equipment was no less than 20 years behind times, a lot more in most cases. I think I'm being very, very kind. And it was a shock. It was not something that I could readily and immediately adjust to.
Especially in the lighting. The lighting and the grip equipment. We took our own camera equipment, so really, I mean, that wasn't any difference for us because we took our own. But the lighting units that they use are usually very small, and they don't use the kind of units that we needed to light the huge sets that we had.
We brought our own cameras in from Hong Kong, and we got some from Tokyo. But as far as the grip equipment and the electric equipment, a lot of it was, again, used for 25 years, and they don't like to change. At that point, they didn't like to update.
They were really ancient equipment. But before that, the original tank at Toho was like a swimming pool and not nearly big enough to hold the gimbals and all of the technical stuff that was needed to put the mock-up of the Erasmus on. So that had to be enlarged. And it didn't fill very quickly. It was like turning on a faucet in your bathtub.
They could only fill the tank at night because when they turned on all of the water to fill the tank, the water pressure in the surrounding neighborhood went down and nobody could take a shower. So they could only work at night. So as a result, we didn't drain it for anything.
Where's the Japans? Ahead! Ahead! Always ahead!
One of my amusing anecdotes was we were going to shoot the big storm scenes in the tank at Toho, and we needed scissor arcs, which are big arc lights that have actually carbon rods that come together and create the big lightning effects. And they didn't have any at Toho, and we said, can you get them? They said yes, they could. They knew where some could be found, and they would bring them in. So we gave them the dates we were going to shoot the scenes, and we said we'd like to shoot a test of them.
The standard equipment that at that time could produce lightning, the primitive scissor arcs that the Japanese had at the studio, just didn't do it.
Lightning is always a very difficult special effect to get on camera on the set. Nowadays with digital and the advancement of technology, you can do it afterwards. But back then, we used to do it on the set, and there's several things you use.
There were all sorts of effects going on. There were water effects, there were lightning effects, there were wind machines. It made a racket. It made a racket. And to pacify the neighborhood, Toshiro Mifune wrote a letter. James Clavell, I think, promised to send them the translation of the book when it finally came out. We sent them sake, we sent them cases of beer, and then they didn't want us to film after 10 o'clock at night. By 10 o'clock at night, we were just getting started. Happily, President Jimmy Carter came to Tokyo at that time, and every single policeman in Japan went to protect him. And so there were no police in the neighborhood. So if the neighbors were calling in complaints about our noise, there was no one to answer the phone. Happily, we got away with it.